You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
Rise and grind, faithful. It is Friday, May 12th. Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and joining me today is Rob Stats Guerrera. Hey, that's a pretty cool name when you say it all together, and it's three names, so maybe you can be a 49er with three names, right? Or is it three first names? Maybe it's three first names. You need another name.
Look, I like it, so I appreciate the kind words.
It fits you. It suits you. Rob Stats. It's just, I don't know. It works. I used to think that was your last name. I was like, no, that can't be. But today, guys, we're going to be talking about the 49ers schedule. It just dropped last evening, and I know we're all excited about it. And yeah, I mean, I don't normally do morning shows like this, but it's bright and early, especially on the West Coast. I know it's 7 a.m. over there. It's 8 Mountain Time. It's about 10 where Rob's at, so he's gotten a little more sleep than us. But yeah, morning shows, I kind of dig it. Like, we might have to start doing this a little more often. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. And sorry, Toby, that your Friday's tomorrow. And yes, I did say smash that like button if you love Fridays. Toby, you like your Friday, though. So smash that like button regardless, because you love your Friday, no matter when that is. So let's start talking about the schedule, though, Rob. As it dropped yesterday, since at this point, we've gotten, an opportunity to look at it, analyze it a little bit, and kind of see where the 49ers fall. Is it favorable to them? Is it not? Let's talk about some of the good first. All right, because I'm kind of an optimist myself. 5 primetime games. I think that's pretty good. In fact, when all of this games or schedule leaks were happening, all of the games we were hearing about were the primetime games, and I was like, oh my god, like, how many are we gonna have? Like, this is kind of crazy. Even though, like, the 49ers are a good team, so it makes sense. The max, I believe, is 6, and a few teams had that one. But 5. What do you think about this, Rob?
I wasn't surprised that they had 5 primetime games because the 49ers are a national brand and they're expected to be good this year. I was surprised that the Eagles game was not one of them. I was stunned by that. To me,
Yes.
Fox must have fought so hard to get that game in that 4:25 Eastern window, because to me, like, how could you not put that game in prime time, especially if Brock Purdy is the starter? He gets the rematch of the game that we never really got to see in the championship game. But look, people watch the Niners. It comes from having a dynasty in the 80s and winning 10 games a year throughout the entire 90s, pretty much. And so, yeah, expect to see the Niners in prime time, and begin your family negotiations now, because you got Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve games for the 49ers.
So I didn't know where to put that in the good or bad column, because you can say to yourself, like, that's awesome. Like, finally, I have something to distract myself from my family. Like, if you're in that, kind of, if you hate the holidays like that. But at the same time, it's like, oh, crap, like, I got a family gathering to go to. I can't watch this game. They don't put the game on Thanksgiving dinner, So that's either good or bad. I will say it's fun to go to those games. I think years back, I went to like a Christmas Eve game, and that one was so much fun. I mean, I don't know. There's just a different kind of energy for primetime games, but also those holiday games. There's nothing like it. So I put that in the I think I put it in the column, but it could be good. It could be good. Another good thing, a week 9 bye. Like, once again, they get a favorable bye week. You love to see it. And for this team, it's especially important because they always seem to deal with first half of the year injuries, and then it seems like after the bye, they're finally starting to get healthy again. So I like the placement of the bye. And when you ask people, like, I know a lot of people have been putting their analysis of the strength of schedule and whatnot. I've seen the 49ers as high as like 10th easiest, but I think the majority is like around 13, 15 is what I've seen. So their schedule is altogether is pretty, mid. I'd say like it's pretty, in the middle of the pack there. But bad stuff with the schedule. Lots of travel. The 49ers are going to be flying 29,958 miles this season to go to those away games. Only the Seahawks are going to be traveling more, 31,600 miles. So that's one of the bad things about being on the coast, right? Like you're going to have to rack up those miles more often than not.
Yeah, it's sort of just their lot in life based on where they are. By the way, it's only about 25,000 miles to circle the planet at the equator. So the Niners are going to travel 4,000 miles more than that this year. They're also going to cross 36 time zones throughout their travel. But that said, I actually don't think it's too bad. Like, I think it could have been worse with the way the schedule was laid out. And one thing that I thought was interesting was usually the Niners will do the Eastern time zone layover when they have back-to-back games there. There's only one real opportunity for that if they wanted to do it, and that's between week 6 and week 7. It's at Cleveland, at Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim Kawakami tweeted that basically the Niners, he didn't think they wanted to do it, that basically there was some grumbling about being away from Levi's for that long, and he thinks that the Niners didn't request sort of back-to-back Eastern time zone games this year like they may have in years past. I thought that was interesting because I thought that was like, the secret sauce, but apparently not.
Yeah, and I mean, I think another factor to this, if we look at the full schedule really quickly, I mean, both of those games, the Vikings game, I believe that falls on is it Monday or I know there was a
Yes.
reasoning for, so it's a longer stretch. It's not just Sunday to Sunday, which I don't know. I guess that can impact you going into week 8 then, if you're having to travel back. I mean, you're going to have to travel regardless. So I don't know. I like the stayovers. I feel like the 49ers do pretty well, but I know it is tough on the players on the team and whatnot. But racking up all these miles is also tough. So, they'll just have to see what they do in this case. But 5 games in the East Coast, 4 10 a.m. starts. I feel like that's the one part that last year they got kind of lucky on. Yeah, they did have to travel to the East Coast here and there, but they didn't have a lot of 10 a.m. starts last season. And this year they have 4, so that may be pretty rough on them. And I don't know.
But
hopefully they're not still sleepy.
Well, the one good thing about that, though, even that is a little better than it looks because one of the 10 a.m. starts is in Pittsburgh in week 1. So that's not terrible. One comes out of the bye week against the Jags. So in terms of, the early body clock game, they've got a few on the schedule, but at least like there's some mitigating factors that may kind of help that a little bit. So again, even that I feel like is not as bad as it could have been.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that before. I mean, do you think in those cases maybe they arrive to the city like a little earlier because they're coming off a bye week because it's week 1? Like maybe they could do that. But I feel like they're a creature of habit, with the way they travel and whatnot. But we'll see if they try to skirt that a little bit. Bad thing I would say is that the 49ers are going to have to play 4 teams that are coming off of a bye week. And 3 of them are in a span of a month. So that could be tough. I mean, I know in the past, 49ers, when they play a team the next week, they typically lose. And now, I mean, we're looking at teams that are going to be refreshed playing the 49ers. So a little bit of a turning of the tables potentially. Teams are going to be well rested, maybe a little more healthy. So that could be something to keep in mind. Also, 2 Thursday night games for the 49ers. I don't love that. I don't love that at all, especially after George Kittle's comments this offseason about, Thursday night football. It's almost like, well, here you go, George. Merry Christmas.
As soon as they said, oh, you can do 2 Thursday games this year, I was like, oh, no, here we go. I knew that the Niners were getting them because they love to put the Niners on in prime time. you mentioned the bye weeks, teams coming off the bye week. It's 4 teams that the Niners will face coming off the bye week. That's tied for the most in the league with the Rams. No other team faces more than 2 teams coming off of a bye week. So that's not ideal. One of those, though, is the Jags game. And so the Niners themselves will also be coming off a bye. So that's a little bit of good news. But I don't like that. I hate when the other team has more time to prepare. But these are all these like little kind of factors that go into the schedule that maybe we don't think about in the moment, but I think about.
Sorry, Jay, got left out of this one. But me and Jay, like, we have our show, Bully Ball Podcast, on Gold Standard Network. We record every Tuesday, pretty much. So you guys check that out. So I had to show Rob some love today. By having him on, because he's usually the guy behind the scenes. And in fact, he was just texting me now and he's like, your mic is cutting in and out. And I'm like, that's weird. Let me look at the settings. It was on my AirPods this whole time. So that's cool. But thanks, Rob, for the heads up, I guess, on the mic situation. But glad you guys are joining us on a Friday morning. Like I said, make sure you hit that like button. Callie likes the fact that the 49ers have games on Thanksgiving and Christmas. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It just, depending on how you look at it, could be a good or bad thing. But let's talk about week 1, Rob, because I know there's a lot of talk about just the 49ers in general in week 1 because they don't have the greatest record in week 1. And I know last year, at least, the most recent memory of week 1 was the rain game, the monsoon, right? So it's like, okay, how much stock can you really put into that kind of game, right? And that being an actual like week 1 issue, you can't really control the weather. But overall, do you feel like the woes of week 1 are legit with this team?
Well, it's not just week 1. It's really the first couple months of the season. So Kyle Shanahan is 9-10 in September in his tenure with the 49ers. And then he's 11-16 in October. So we're talking 20-26 through the first 2 months of the season. And that's, over 6 years now. That's with different quarterbacks. That's against different opponents. So there's the only constant really has been Shanahan. And yet for some reason, even with really good players, the Niners come out of the box very, very slowly. Now, the good news for next year or this year is while the Steelers game is tough, week 2 is the Rams, week 3 is the Giants, week 4 is the Cardinals. So hopefully they can sort of mitigate that a little bit early on, even if they do drop one in Pittsburgh in week 1.
I feel like that's a 4-0 start. I mean, it should be, right? Like we always talk about this or like every time that I come up with my predictions, I think about, okay, best case scenario, like this is what they should. This is what the record should be based on the talent on the roster. But it never really happens that way, right? Because they drop games that they should win. It happens. I mean, I think it happens to like kind of every team, but 49ers especially. I mean, I follow them the closest. I know it happens with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of try to give 2 predictions because I do like my best case scenario, like this is what it should be, but this is kind of their floor of what record I feel they should have. But look, I feel looking at the first 4 games of the season, those should be wins, right? And it would be a shame if they lost any one of those. I think the only one maybe with potential. Okay, if you believe in the week 1 curse, you're looking at that Steelers game kind of suspect. But I'm kind of thinking maybe against the Giants. That could be, it's prime time. Things could happen. Although it is at home, so and it's the home opener. So
yeah,
we just never know. You just never know. But hopefully they have everything in line once they play the Cowboys in week 5, because as we know, those are highly anticipated games, with this team, and it's going to be prime time as well at home. Love to play the Cowboys. They usually win. I mean, the 49ers usually win. So highly anticipated, but hopefully they have all their ducks in a row by then and not dealing with any pesky injuries from like training camp, preseason, like they always do. We'll have to wait and see. But another like underrated stretch. I mean, it's a 2-week stretch, but I think this stretch is kind of tough, like the Vikings and then the Bengals. Luckily, they have the bye week after that, but I feel like the Bengals are pretty tough. A pretty tough draw, and the Vikings, they're a good team as well. I know we make all the Kirk Cousins jokes, and we make fun of their team in general, but they're a really good squad. So having those 2 games back to back, I know everyone's talking about the week 12 to week 14, sequence, which is very tough. But I think there's some low key tough games in this one. You could even look at week 10 against the Jags. The Jags, I feel like they could be legit this year.
I want to go back to the stretch you were just talking about, because if Deshaun Watson, if we get the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson, then all of a sudden the week 5 game against the Cowboys, week 6 at the Browns, 7 at the Vikings, and 8 at the against the Bengals, like that's a really tough stretch for this defense, because you're talking about good quarterbacks in all of those games. I still think the 49ers should win the majority of them. I believe DraftKings has the Niners as the favorites in every game of the year except one. Do you know the one game they're not favored in?
Probably the Eagles.
Correct. And I think it's like they're like 2.5 point underdogs, which is crazy because the Eagles are at home. So like even that game, even with all the quarterback uncertainty, the Niners are still favored to win every game except one. But that stretch week 5 through week 8 could be very tough if Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson like he has been in the past. And you would think he'd be a little better this year because he's gotten the year of football now under his belt after being basically gone for like 3 years.
Yeah, that's true. There were times last year where like he looked very bad, like washed as hell. But who knows, like to your point, just another year under the system and, all those issues behind him, maybe that will help rejuvenate his career in Cleveland. Although I'm hoping not, because I'm hoping that stretch doesn't turn into 3 like tough games. I think because then if you look at the Browns in week 6 and you think to yourself that they're a tough team because Deshaun Watson suddenly looks like himself again, then it becomes a larger stretch, because then you got to look at the Cowboys in week 5. Then it turns into this 4-game stretch of like potential hell.
Yes,
that bye week will be earned. Let's just say that. But let's talk about the other toughest stretch. I mean, this is the stretch that everyone is talking about, week 12 to week 14, because you play the Seahawks twice in 3 weeks. But in the middle of that is your game against the Eagles, right? And that is in Philadelphia. And that is the one, probably the most anticipated game for 49ers, for fans, just because of everything that happened in the NFC Championship game, right? And so you can't play that week 12 game in Seattle thinking about that next game against the Eagles, right? You got to take it one game at a time. And as we know, like that's going to be tough. That game against the Seahawks is prime time. And I've been saying it. I know people don't like to hear it, but the Seahawks, they're ready to compete. Like they're going to be better than they were last year. I know the 49ers beat them twice last year, but they were legit even last year. 3 times, sorry. But they were legit even last year, okay? And I think the only their defense was just so bad. And also I think the 49ers defended Geno Smith so well. And so if all these things hold true, going forward, yeah, I can feel good about it. But they drafted some really good pieces in this draft, and they've done a hell of a job building through the draft these past couple of years. And as we know, Pete Carroll always has his guys ready to compete. And so these 2 games in a 3-week stretch, I'm a little nervous about that. What do you think, Rob?
I hate playing the same team twice in 3 weeks. Like I know that it's really hard to make the schedule. I understand that they have to honor so many different requests from teams and networks and all that stuff. But every time I see that, I'm like, really? Like you couldn't figure out a way to avoid that, especially because division opponent also. Like I don't like it. The good news is, so they play the Seahawks November 23rd on Thanksgiving. Then you've got sort of the mini bye week before essentially what is your biggest game of the season against an NFC opponent, potentially competing for the number 1 seed. And if you look at the Eagles schedule, they go Dallas week 9, then they have a bye. Then they're in Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Then they play the Bills at home. Then they play the Niners at home. And then they go to Dallas and to Seattle. That is a crazy stretch for the Eagles.
I did not see that. Oh my God.
The Niners are coming off the mini bye. The game before the mini bye is the Buccaneers, who they should be able to handle pretty easily. So the Niners are in a decent position, and the Eagles are going to be in the middle of just a brutal gauntlet stretch, the toughest part of their schedule by far. So that does give me a little bit of hope. I do agree that the Seahawks are not a bad team. I am not as scared of them as everybody else is. As long as they have Mr. Can't manage a game in tight situations, Pete Carroll as their head coach, and they don't have a quarterback who can pull magic out of his ass like Russell Wilson used to do against the Niners. Like, I think Russell Wilson made up for so much bad stuff from Pete Carroll that even though the Seahawks are still good, I just don't have that fear of them like I used to. And maybe they drafted some good players. I'm not going to pretend to know. All I'll say is this. I want to see those players be good before I believe it and before I worry about it. That's all I'm going to say about the Seahawks.
That's fair. I think, like I said, I think the 49ers defended Geno Smith very well, and I don't see that changing. Clearly it worked in those 3 games last season. They're going to go out and do the same thing. Like you said, Geno Smith isn't some world beater who's, going to be able to adjust around those, I don't think. So, but I will say that third game, because that was the wild card game, right, against the Seahawks. Yep. That third game, it fell a lot closer than the previous 2, if my memory serves me right.
Yes. Well, yeah, because don't forget. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
In the third quarter of that game, the Seahawks are driving down, I think, to take the lead before Bosa strips Geno Smith or recovers the fumble that I think Omenahu actually stripped Geno Smith. The Niners got the ball back, and then basically after that, they were just off and running and the game got away. But it was very like Seattle's driving down to take the lead, and we're nervous. So that game was closer than the final score ended up eventually being. So your memory is correct.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that was a testament of them improving throughout the season, right? Hard to say, but I think they got better on defense based on the draft picks. I know we still got to wait to see what those pieces look on the field, once the season gets going, but hey, I'm cautious of them. Let's just say that. I'm not scared of them. I'm very cautious of them. So, Rob, have you had a chance to look at your think about a record prediction to this point?
So the over-under, I think, for the Niners is 11.5. And that's right where I think they're going to be. I don't love that Lamar Jackson is back in Baltimore and they've kind of loaded up a little bit. Like that game was looking a lot easier when he was not going to be the quarterback. So that's a tough game. I really think that they are going to be at the 10-11 win mark. And that's going to be good enough to get to the playoffs in the NFC. And if you're a Niner fan, that should be all you want, because we've seen that the Niners can find a new level in the playoffs. And so just get there, just get to the dance, and I'll take my chances against anybody in the playoffs in the NFC, particularly in an NFC that is not as strong as it has been in the past. This is a pretty weak NFC. Yes, you've got the Eagles, who are a very, very good team, probably a great team. But other than that, everybody else, I feel like that's not the Niners, is good to very good, but not like great. The Cowboys are good. The Seahawks are good. The Lions might be good, but nobody that fills me with fear other than Philadelphia. So I think the Niners will be right at that 10-11 win mark. Let's be conservative. I'll call it 10 wins.
I think, yeah. So somewhat conservatively, I think I said 10 wins as well. And yeah, I feel like that's their floor, honestly. Like if they win less than that, I think it'd be a huge, huge disappointment for this team. But so, anything can happen. They could conceivably win more than 10 games. That's always a possibility as well. I mean, they won 13 just a season ago, right? So I asked you guys in the comments what you guys thought. How many wins do you think the 49ers get this season? So here are the poll results. So most of you have said 12 to 10 range. So that's pretty much on par with what we're saying. 67% of you said that. 33% said 13 plus, 0%
Oof.
said 10 or less, basically. No one thinks they'll.
Interesting.
I guess I should have made it 9 or less, but you know what I mean. So, yeah. So people feeling pretty bullish on this team, and I mean they have good reason to be, right? I mean, aside from maybe the quarterback situation, which is still in flux, I would say that the team has improved, right? Would you say that, Rob?
That's a good question. They did lose a lot of, they didn't lose any like massive pieces, but they lost a lot of really good, really solid pieces. And one of the things that has sort of kept the Niners afloat through injuries, excuse me, and quarterback uncertainty is the depth and the quality on this team. Like last season was not a year you're supposed to make the NFC title game. And it's not a year you're supposed to go into the playoffs on a 10-game winning streak. You had all the quarterback injuries. Kittle missed time. Jimmy Ward missed time. Multiple players were banged up all throughout the year with injuries, and the 49ers were still there. So that does give me hope this year that even if they do have some injuries, that they'll be able to overcome it. But it all comes down to the quarterback play. And I know you and I greatly disagree on the Niners quarterback situation, which is totally fine by me. How much faith do you have in all of these guys? Because that's the question is the Niners are probably going to play multiple quarterbacks. So if multiple quarterbacks do end up playing, does that change your win total projection? Or do you think it's 10, 11 wins regardless of what the quarterback combination is?
You're saying, what do I think about these 3 quarterbacks that they have? Like,
right. And does your opinion on the Niners win total, does it change at all if I change who the quarterback is, or do you think regardless of who they start, they're going to win 10 at least?
I certainly think there's potential. Like if Brock Purdy's not there, you feel a little less confident. And I'll say why. Trey Lance, because he hasn't had a ton of experience. So he is still learning on the fly whenever he is out there. And that's not to say I don't think he can reach, whatever ceiling we think he could still get to, but the reality of it is he hasn't played a lot. So it may not look as comfortable as of quarterback play as we've seen with Brock Purdy. When Brock Purdy's out there, he's comfortable. I feel comfortable watching him. Trey Lance, I'm a little nervous. He might make things happen. He makes some good plays, but I'm still nervous. Sam Darnold, I would also be nervous for the reason of him having issues taking care of the football. He turns the ball over like no one's business. And so that would make me, pause a little bit. And that would make me feel like, okay, the 49ers can drop some games potentially, because when you're giving the ball away, you're giving chances to the other team. So yeah, I think I'm not as comfortable with the other quarterbacks as I am with Brock Purdy in this moment in time, but that's saying what we know right now in May. It's May 12th. We haven't seen these players on the field yet this season for the 49ers. And so I think maybe I changed my mind, changed my tune a little bit once, training camp rolls around, once preseason rolls around, and I see what these quarterbacks look like on the field with the rest of this team. We have to remember Trey Lance didn't play with Christian McCaffrey, last season. We saw how much of a boost that gave Jimmy Garoppolo. He didn't look all that great before Christian McCaffrey came around, right? So it changed the dynamic of this team. And so I think both Darnold and Trey Lance, I think, could benefit from having Christian McCaffrey out there. So basically, yeah, whoever starts those first few games, because at this moment, we still don't know when Brock Purdy is going to actually be fully cleared, when he's actually going to start playing games again. Does he go on IR for the first 4 weeks and then he comes back week 5? That would be a tough draw for Brock to come back week 5 against the Cowboys. That's tough on prime time, no less. I'm sure the NFL would love that. But, as a team, I think you also got to protect your players from certain situations. And I feel like putting them in such a high pressure spot in his first game back from injury, I don't know if I love that. They could also, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm just looking at it. Like if you look in that range, unless you go like week 4 against the Cardinals, that's a tough
That'd be
spot for
nice.
any quarterback to have to come into, right? Like, because you're saying week 5 against the Cowboys is tough. Brock didn't look fantastic against that defense in the playoffs last time we saw it. Do you want Brock coming in potentially week 6 against the Browns and Myles Garrett? That's a little dicey. Maybe the Vikings is a decent spot. I don't want him having to come back against Lou Amarillo and the Bengals. Like, that's a defense I don't want my quarterback to have to face right off the bat. So there, unless you go Cardinals week 4 or maybe Giants if Brock's going to be back that soon, the return there is a little dicey.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree. The Cardinals is definitely like the softest landing spot for Brock Purdy to come back. And if he comes back week 4, then you're not putting him on PUP. You're not putting him on IR. I think we'll learn a lot about what the 49ers potentially, what they feel about the other quarterbacks and how much confidence potentially they have in both of those guys based on how they, how they decide to move forward with Brock Purdy those first few weeks of the season. Because if they put him on the PUP list, that's 6 weeks. That tells you they have a lot of confidence in either Trey Lance or Sam Darnold, maybe both of them, right? Even if they put them on the PUP list, that's, you're saying, okay, we know these guys could take care of these 4 games without Brock. But if they're in a situation where they keep Brock Purdy on the roster, no PUP list, no IR to start the season, I think that tells you, oh, we can't wait too long. It's like we need him back. Or it could be that they really want that soft landing spot and they know he would be ready by week 4, which I don't know if they can make those types of predictions at that moment. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting what they do with the quarterback situation. But Rob, you said it. We disagree quite a bit on the 49ers quarterback situation. And really it's like how, we interpret, I guess, what's being said about the quarterback situation, I should say. So I'm going to put on the screen here some of the quotes because, David Lombardi was so gracious of putting, the main Kyle Shanahan quotes from the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event in one thread. So let's just go through these and you tell me what you think on some of these and I'll tell you what I think. Is that cool?
Oh, I like this. Okay, let's go.
All right. So on Brock Purdy's return, he said, as long as Brock's elbow heals right, he'll be the exact same guy. He's doing the same drills all the other quarterbacks are doing. He's just using a towel to throw, but still doing violent motions, still moving. He's just not doing it with a football. As long as there's not a setback, we think he'll be there at training camp. Now, I know, Rob, you had some thoughts on that last portion, that he'll be there at training camp. What did you think that meant?
So I interpreted that as he more than just he'll be physically present at training camp, because I don't think anybody doubted that he would physically be present at training camp. I think we all thought that. When Kyle says he'll be there at training camp, I think he means throwing and doing everything the other quarterbacks are doing, because he just mentioned right before that how Brock is already doing the same drills now, including violent arm motions, which that's a scary, like, I don't necessarily love that thought for Brock. Right, like in this moment. But I was really stunned at how positive Kyle Shanahan was about all the quarterbacks, really, but starting with Brock here, because remember, like, he's supposed to be the negative guy, right? Lynch is supposed to be the positive guy. I mean, Kyle came out in this thing and he was. What do you mean? You think Lynch is the negative guy?
Yeah, at least this season, like, and then Kyle, I think you learn so much more when Kyle speaks than John Lynch, because John Lynch just gives you like the word salad. He says convicted 5 times, he regurgitates the same phrases, like, just over in different order. But we actually get some answers with Kyle, and so I feel like he's a little more open with what he says about the team. And to me, I get a more positive tone out of Kyle than I do with John, because John's just keeping everything so close to the vest or chest, whatever the hell this saying is. And Kyle opens up. I appreciate it. I like Kyle. I like hearing from Kyle, especially I think in this setting, it was, it being like this event that was just pretty much 49er fans and 49ers media. I think there was less pressure to, say the wrong thing, right? So he was kind of just speaking his mind. And here's what I think about, him saying he's going to be there at training camp. I agree with you. Obviously he's going to be throwing. We knew that already. If he's throwing, I mean, yeah, he's going to be there at training camp because that's pretty much what the quarterbacks do when they're at training camp, and they're not going through contact. The quarterbacks are always non-contact. They have the little non-contact jersey on and whatnot. So, I mean, I don't see from the beginning, I never saw any reason why Brock Purdy wouldn't be at training camp participating just like all the other quarterbacks if he would be well within his throwing program, right? Which it seems like, he's well on his way there because he's doing violent arm motions and all those things. So maybe we're on the same page about this. But I guess, like, to me, this wasn't new information at all. Like, we knew that he was going to be back at training camp. So I guess I didn't see whole, like, I didn't see the whole issue with this or mayhem over this statement.
Well, when I read that, to me, Kyle was saying Brock's going to be back by training camp, so he's going to open the season as the starter. That I took it to mean like, what? I mean, that's what surprised me, because when I read that, my first reaction was like, he's going to be back. He's already doing the drills now, and now so that by the time training camp rolls around, he's going to be there. He's going to be back, barring a setback, right? Like, so I was like, oh, maybe Brock's going to be ready to go week one, and if so, then Trey Lance's chances of being the starter are, really, really took a beating there.
Do I think there is a chance he's ready week one? Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think the team is ready to like say that, because that puts a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy, right?
For sure.
I think obviously that's their hope. And that's definitely possible that he's ready by then. Again, like the no setbacks thing is key. And I feel like every freaking quarterback that has had an injury on this team has dealt with a setback at some point. So I'm not holding my breath either. But I think that's the hope, and it's definitely possible. So they're not ruling it out, I don't think.
Absolutely not. And you're right. I mean, honestly, like, the only guy I can think of that hasn't had a setback has been Nick Bosa, who's kind of, famously done his own thing when it comes to workouts and rehab and everything. A lot of 49ers players coming back from injury have a setback. So we cannot just take that for granted that everything's going to be, champagne and strawberries.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there isn't any setback. And Shanahan was asked, on Brock Purdy potentially improving because, since he isn't fully cleared, since he isn't fully participating in all this offseason stuff, he can work on the cerebral part of football and watching more film and things like that. To which Shanahan said, when he can jump in there at full speed because he got the experience watching it, I think he's going to be a hell of a lot better. Sure. I mean, do you think that watching film like necessarily makes you better? I mean, because this was the whole thing with like Trey Lance, because he watched, Jimmy Garoppolo, because he was on the bench, he can, once he's going to be out there, he's going to be all caught up on the cerebral part, and he could just go out there. I feel like that was always expectation with Lance, and like still when he's out there, he kind of somewhat looks uncomfortable. So are you buying this, that you think like Brock Purdy, because he's going to watch more film, that he's going to be like ready to go? I don't think it'll be because of the film stuff.
I think watching the film can make anybody better to a point. I think eventually you get to a point where the improvement stops. It's not like the more film you watch, the better you get, and that never ends. It's like, okay, you watch a certain amount, you learn some things, and then like you've got it, Then you just have to go out there and take what you've seen from the film and implement it into how you play on the field. Anybody can sit there learning how to drive a car and read a little driver's ed book and learn the rules of the road and what you're supposed to do in certain situations. But when you're behind the wheel and some jerk sideswipes you from the left-hand lane, you got to know how to react and what the car is going to do and factor in the weather conditions and all that stuff. And those are two very, very different things. So sure, the film helps, but only to a certain spot. I don't think that Brock Purdy is going to come in now and be like a football genius because he was able to watch more film while he's rehabbing this injury.
I mean, he was watching film before, right? So it's like
Right.
this doesn't move the needle for me.
But there's Kyle
but
pumping these guys up again.
he pumped. So I'll say this: Kyle pumped every quarterback up.
Yes.
You know, in all of these questions, which was nice. You know, it was kind of cool because, like, to me, I truly think that's how Kyle feels about his quarterback room. Like, he's so bullish on all of them, and he's said it in like multiple times. I'm sure we'll get to it. That he feels they have 3 startable quarterbacks or starting level, whatever he said. We'll get to that, but. On Trey Lance, this is what he said. We did expect Lance to be the man for a long time, and I think that he still can be, and also don't expect the last pick of the draft to come in and play at that level. And then he went on to say, I believe Trey would have got into a level where he would have done similar stuff. He missed that opportunity, and Brock came in and did. I truly think Trey can go in and do that, but Brock's already done it, and that's a very good thing for us to have. Look, I mean, that's just the reality of it. He's not wrong. None of this is like controversial in my opinion. I mean, it's what happened. Like, yeah, Trey Lance didn't get the opportunity. Purdy did, and we know what he did with that opportunity, right? So this is totally fair in my book for what he said.
100% agree. Like when you draft Lance where you drafted him, you don't do that unless you think he has the potential to be the man for a long time. And like, it is indisputable, Brock Purdy came in and played way better than anybody thought he could have played. He played the way they would have hoped that Trey Lance could have played. Like, that's the level of quarterback play that they were hoping to get. It just, as it turns out, it came from Brock Purdy rather than Trey Lance. And
I do also think it would have taken weeks probably for Trey Lance to get there, again, for this experience standpoint, to just kind of feel more comfortable with time in that offense. But Brock Purdy, as soon as he walked on the field, he was comfortable, and we know that he had the experience. So it was kind of like, well, with Brock Purdy, like, we didn't really have to wait for it. He was already like ready, kind of thing. I don't think that's 100%. What Shanahan's saying here, but I know, like, that's how they feel about it, because that's just the reality. Once again, that's just how it happened. So here's what he said when asked about Purdy and Lance. And Shanahan referenced Sam Darnold. We know we have a quarterback who's done it at a high level in the NFL who we can win with. I also believe we have 2 more on our roster strongly, but one guy has shown it. So let's see how it plays out. So I kind of like this because he is admitting or acknowledging at least that Sam Darnold has not shown that he is like a strong, a good quarterback, to this point. And so, but they do believe in him. And same thing with Trey Lance. They haven't seen enough from Trey Lance to really know that he can do it at a high level in the NFL. But I think they still believe in him too. So that's why it's like, we'll see how it plays out. And they know for sure that Brock Purdy is the guy who has proven this already. And that's why he has been the leader of the clubhouse, as they have said. So again, I'm fine with this too, because I think that's the reality. Sam Darnold, he hasn't shown anything. He hasn't shown much.
Has. That's the weird thing about this. Like, Trey Lance hasn't shown anything, right? Like, when you apply for a credit card, when you have no credit, the credit card companies, they pause first. They have to think about it because you're an unknown. When Sam Darnold's applying for a credit card, he has bad credit. It's not, well, he doesn't have any. He has bad. He has done poorly for 56 games. That's the difference. And I feel like that's the weird thing that 49ers fans are not acknowledging and Kyle Shanahan is not acknowledging. He's not an unknown. He's a known. He stinks. We all saw the games. These aren't secret games. He stinks. And for Kyle to back up Mayoko's stupid comment the other day, I don't think it's that controversial. Really? You don't think it's that? That's dumb. It's just a dumb comment. Like, What is there a different Sam Darnold somewhere that I don't know about that only the 49ers have access to? Because if it's the guy that we've all seen, I don't know how anybody could have these opinions about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the secret sauce is Kyle Shanahan, right? I mean, that has to be like his thought. Like, oh, but he's never had a good coach like me. He's never had a good quarterback coach like Brian Griese, which I thought Brian Griese did a phenomenal job last season with all. I mean, we didn't really see much him with Trey Lance, but with Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo, like they both looked great with Brian Griese. So yeah, I think, obviously they're banking on their team. They're banking on their coaches. But that's why he says like that he hasn't shown it at a high level, or that he could be a good quarterback at a high level. He said only one quarterback has shown it. That would be Brock Purdy. So I think he is on the same page, but again, I think he does feel some hope because of the situation that he is now in. But we'll see. We'll see. But more things on Trey Lance, and this one to me was maybe was some of the most insightful stuff, right? He broke his finger before was it the 2020 season? No, sorry. The 2021 season is when
preseason of his rookie year. Yep.
Yeah. And that, I guess, proved to be a huge issue with him. Here's what Shanahan said. He broke that finger and it didn't heal right. Trey spent a whole year throwing without a bent finger, which changes everything, which shows the toughness of the kid. He never complained about it. He just tried to adjust so he could be out there. He spent a whole offseason just trying to rehab his grip so he could throw normal. I know a lot of people suspected that there were issues with that finger, like a year later. There was talk about it. And, I think all those people were like shut down, like, oh, you're just making excuses for Trey Lance. That's what all the Trey Lance haters said. But, coming from Kyle Shanahan, like, it seemed like it was a legit issue. And yeah, it seemed to have really impacted his throwing mechanics a bit. And now he's correcting all of that, or he has corrected all of that. It seems like he's doing much better these days with his throwing motion and all that.
So this is where I think we're going to differ, because I think all of this stuff from Kyle is him trying to do what they were trying to do with Jimmy Garoppolo, which is pump up the trade value. Everything that they're saying about Trey Lance. Oh, you don't like his throwing? Oh, well, that's because he had a hurt finger. Where was this energy for Trey Lance when people were dogging him last year after the Bears game, or even in his rookie season? I didn't hear anybody talking about the finger injury then. They knew it was broken. They knew it wasn't healing. Where was this then? So now all this stuff that Kyle is saying about Trey Lance, it's like, oh no, he was damaged goods last year. Now he's better. His base is better. His footwork is better. He's the best he's ever looked, Kyle said. I think all of this is them trying to get somebody to make an offer for Trey Lance that they apparently didn't get during the draft.
But you don't think that Kyle might actually believe these things?
I think that they are quote unquote convicted on Brock, that they're all in with Brock.
Well,
and if they're not in with,
yeah, they are.
And they
have, like that. That doesn't mean they have
Sam is
to
the backup.
trade Trey Lance today. You know what I mean?
I think
why do they want Sam to be? Why do they want Sam to be the backup?
I don't know.
I don't think they do yet. Like, they can't make that decision yet. They've only seen Sam Darnold and Trey Lance on the field together since the start of OTAs, which, like, I don't know, that's been just a few weeks. And you can't make a decision on who you want your backup to be now in May. Like, that would just be preposterous. I'm not saying that maybe it's possible, sure. I mean, but I think it's highly unlikely that they're sitting there like, yeah, so they have this whole plan that Sam Darnold's going to be their backup, who they haven't seen play in the system yet. And Trey Lance is going to be shipped off to, who knows where. That would just be ridiculous for them to be trying to do that
yes,
now in May.
I completely agree with you, but that doesn't mean that's not what they're trying to do. And here's why I look at different things, right? Did they or did they not run out and sign Sam Darnold almost as fast as you could do it? Right? They agreed to a contract with him on the first day of legal tampering. That is a fact. That is not conspiracy theory. That's literally what occurred.
They
Do we agree?
needed a quarterback. Yeah, they needed a quarterback. You're just
Okay.
gonna have two quarterbacks and like they're both hurt or coming off of injury. They needed a quarterback.
I never said they shouldn't have signed a quarterback. Of course they should have signed a quarterback, but they got one right away. Which means they wanted. That tells you they wanted him. Like he was the guy that they targeted. He was a priority for them, and they made it happen.
Yeah.
Then
that I agree with.
Right. Also, we know that they were talking to the Vikings in February before Brock Purdy ever even had surgery. They were talking to the Vikings about trading Trey Lance. Then we got the rumors from Ian Rappaport on March 28th at the league meetings. Darnold's going to be QB1. No pushback from the 49ers after that. Who leaks the Trey Lance trade rumors story? Ian Rappaport. So if the team was pissed at Ian Rappaport, they sure didn't show it because he got the story that dominated the week that came out. Then, April 29th, Rappaport is still saying Darnold's going to be QB1. Like nonchalantly almost saying it. No pushback from the 49ers. The only time we heard about pushback was after the draft when the rosters were settled, when there was no chance of Trey Lance being moved, and now all of a sudden, Kyle Shanahan, first chance he gets, talking up Trey. He's so great. He's the best quarterback ever, blah, blah, blah. To me, they didn't want him, and they still don't want him, and they're still trying to pump up his value.
I don't think so. Okay, look. Do I think that there's a possibility that they trade him somewhere down the line? Yeah, sure. But again, to start trying to do that now, I thought it was ridiculous to try to do it during the draft. That just was not going to happen. But even now, it's still too early, in my opinion, to want to trade him. But I don't know. Maybe you got to get your feelers out early, I guess. But no one's going to. So, if this is their strategy, they're dumb because no one's going to trade for him until they see him on the field and actually see what he looks like. They're not paying attention to these quotes.
That's where I feel like we both agree that it's dumb. Where we disagree is I think the 49ers are being dumb and you have more faith in them to not be this dumb. That I feel like that is the ultimate disagreement with us.
I do. But I don't think they are this dumb.
But Steph, look how they've managed the quarterback position this entire time. They've been stupid about it the whole way. They have done nothing that should give us faith in how they handle the quarterback position.
I mean, that is fair to say that it's been a hoopla from the beginning. But I don't know. I just don't think that. I don't know. I can't let myself go that far and I call it conspiracy because it is a conspiracy. You can't prove that it's true. It's just this idea that just keeps evolving with each quote. And you're just yeah, that connects to what I said. I don't know. In my mind, it's just one big conspiracy, Rob. And I'm looking at what's in front of me, and what's in front of me is just black and white. It's Kyle Shanahan, saying good things about the quarterback he traded up to 3 to get. You know what I mean? Is it that outlandish? Is it that outlandish to think that Trey Lance actually does look better this year?
Well, I think it would be a tremendous thing if it were true, because I think Trey would deserve a ton of credit to rehab an injury that took 2 surgeries to fix, and while also changing his throwing mechanics. That's crazy. That's really, really hard to do. So if it's true, he deserves a ton of credit. And by the way, I saw that comment that you threw up there. I like that we disagree. I'm happy. And I hope
that's why I had him on today. I was we got to talk about this.
I hope that you are correct, because I want them to handle the quarterback position this way. In fact, I don't even want Sam Darnold to be on the team. I want them to have so much faith in Trey Lance that they're not going to have him split reps with anybody. I want you to be correct. I just don't think that you are. I think that they are going to do a stupid thing. And I don't know why they're going to do a stupid thing, but they have done some stupid things with the quarterback position in the past. So that's like,
They
and
have.
maybe I haven't done a good enough job of expressing that difference.
No, they definitely have, and we probably looked at the quarterback room last season and we're like, well, why would they keep Jimmy Garoppolo around? It ended up they told us they want to insulate the quarterback room. That ended up being a hell of a good reason. I mean, look what happened. And once again in the NFC Championship game, like they needed more quarterbacks, right? And quality quarterbacks, not just any quarterbacks. So I think that was the deciding factor between who they brought in, their quarterback room right now. And I think it would be very contradictory, which is not to say that they haven't done contradictory things before, but it would make little to no sense for them to, trade one of these guys right now without unless Brandon Allen is the answer. Which I'm not seeing. So I don't know. I don't see it. I would have to see a lot more, Rob, to believe that they're wanting to trade Trey Lance right now.
Can I say one more thing? Because I think this is overlooked. And I was screaming about this last year and nobody wanted to believe me. Part of the reason they needed 3 quarterbacks last year is because the guy that they got to be their insurance policy was a crappy insurance policy. The backup car, so to speak, was a car that broke down almost all the time. So that's why you needed 3, right? Like that, it's a weird thing that the 49ers tried to sell us. They tried to sell us on, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo is the insurance policy, but Garoppolo's gotten hurt every single year of his career except one. Even when he was playing part-time with the Patriots, he got hurt. So that was why they needed 3 quarterbacks. If their backup was, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a backup level quarterback or a quarterback that doesn't get hurt. I can't think of one right now. Let's just,
Brandon Allen.
I don't know. Like, but you see my point? Like, the reason they needed 3 is because their insurance policy also always gets hurt, and hurt guys get hurt. That's what they tend to do. And so that was also, I almost wonder if like there's fear that they have of like, oh, we need more quarterbacks, more. It's like, no, how about you just, the guys on your team aren't guys that are constantly injured.
I mean, obviously that's fair. I mean, I gotta wonder if they're thinking the same thing about Trey Lance because he has dealt with a number of injuries since, being in the league. So maybe that's the fair. Sam Darnold, the reason for that move, although he did get hurt last year as well. But it's football. Injuries do happen. So let's talk about, I mean, we kind of talked about some of these other quotes already. I don't want to keep you here forever, Rob, but this is what he said about, Trey having a better base, the throwing mechanics. He said he was able to get such a better base the last 2 months. I think Trey's the best we've had him right now. And I think, to me, it's not crazy to think that that's true. He was working with Patrick Mahomes, quarterback coach. If this finger thing was really a issue with him and he's now further removed from that injury, it's not crazy to think that he is actually looking better these days. And, we saw the evidence in that video of him throwing that very tight spiral. Some of the balls he was throwing last season, they're kind of duckish. You know what I mean? They were wobblers. Yeah. They would still get to the spot, but they were, wobbly. They were ugly. It wasn't pretty. And the throws that we saw, those 2 throws that came out that went viral, those looked really good. Those had some really tight spirals. And I'm not here to say, okay, that means all of these things, but just off of that alone, I think we can see somewhat of a difference in, his throws because those balls looked a lot sharper coming out.
The interesting thing to me about this, and here goes Rob parsing his words again. I know people don't like when I do this.
There you go.
But what we've heard about Trey is the throwing motion, right? The throwing motion, it's weird, it's long, it's wonky. But Kyle didn't mention that, right? He said the base. So I wonder if the issue that the 49ers had with Trey Lance, or the thing that they wanted him to work on, was a footwork issue, which honestly,
that's
I know that Grant Cohn has talked about, the locked front leg, that Trey's leg is too straight when he throws, which is something that they said about Alex Smith also. So I don't know if that's what Kyle was talking about. I would love to hear more information on that. Like what specifically did they want him to address? And apparently he's now addressed it, but it's interesting that it wasn't the throwing motion or the arms that they wanted to fix. It was the legs.
Yeah, I have heard that about like the footwork and stuff, just rumors and stuff, but conceivably that could be something that they wanted him to work on, and it seems like he is. So that's good. He's looking better. So this is what you were talking about, obviously we all know what Matt Mayoko said about Sam Darnold being the best thrower of the football the 49ers have ever had. And Shanahan said, I don't think that's a big controversial statement. Sam's an unbelievable thrower. He was born to do that. I think Jimmy's one of the best throwers on the planet, the way he can do it. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. I look at this very literally because I'm like, okay, there are only, 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, Jimmy Garoppolo being one of them. Maybe he's being very literal, like he's one of the 32 best throwers on the planet. So in that case, I mean, he's not wrong. Right?
No, he's wrong. I will say for the record, Kyle Shanahan knows more football than I will ever know. Like, that's clear. That's not a contest. That's not a question. It's not a debate. But holy crap, I can tell who's a better thrower between Sam Darnold, Steve Young, Joe Montana. Like, come on. Like, what are we talking about here? You can praise Sam Darnold without suddenly making him the best thrower of the football in the history of the 49ers. Like, that is an outrageous quote to me. And I'm stunned that Mayoko said it. And I'm stunned that Kyle Shanahan is up there saying, I don't think it's controversial. You don't think it's controversial? That's wild to me. He deserves to be challenged on that and called out. And I hope that he does. I hope that he absolutely does, because it's ridiculous. And that's what I would want to know. Like, why can't you just say, hey, we think Sam's a really good thrower? Why does it have to automatically vault to the level of better than Joe Montana, better than Steve Young, better than Colin Kaepernick, better than Jeff Garcia? Like, damn, man. Like, that's just weird to me. And I think that Steph's laptop has crashed on her. So I'm going to keep talking here. Sorry, I can't see your comments in the stream. Maybe I can. Oh, I can see the comments on the stream.
All right.
Oh,
I'm back. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. My laptop just like completely just crashed. That's never happened before. It didn't like what you were saying, Rob.
Well, that's a long list. That was a quick recovery, though. Damn, you got back fast.
Because it was really weird. So it crashed. It did the whole like loading screen. Like, it restarted itself. It was bizarre. I hope that never happens again. Sorry, guys.
Here's my question. Like, why do we can praise Sam Darnold without making him the best thrower in the history of the 49ers organization? Like, that was the weird thing. Like, why do we make that jump? That's crazy to me.
Oh, me already? Yeah, no. And then like some Emiliano's saying, why did Kyle just include Jimmy out of nowhere in that answer? Yeah, that I don't know. Like, why do you feel like he needed? We're past Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle. Like, we're over it. Stop bringing him up. But whatever. I mean, him saying that, based on everything he said about all of these quarterbacks, like, I'm not really surprised that he's like pumping up every one of them. Oh no, Rob, he's pumping up Sam Darnold. Does that mean he wants to trade Sam Darnold too?
No, it means he wants to start Sam Darnold.
Why when he says something good about Sam Darnold, he wants to start him, but when he says something good about Trey Lance, he wants to trade him? Like,
because
why?
Sam Darnold, they just brought Sam Darnold in on a free agent contract. You're not going to bring Sam Darnold in on a free agent contract and then immediately trade him before he even plays a game for you. That doesn't make sense. But they've had Trey Lance there since 2021.
But yeah, but they also traded up to 3. Like, they invested so much in Trey Lance. And like I said, I'm not here to tell you that they may never trade Trey Lance, because like I feel legitimately that they could. But I don't see that happening now, and I don't think like any of these quotes are like indicative of some like plan to trade Lance. That's all I'm saying. Obviously, they're
And
not going to
that's
trade Sam Darnold, but that's just all I'm saying.
yeah, and that's I understand if you interpret it that way. We have different interpretations. That's totally fine. What does scare me a little, let me ask you this question. When is the last time you can remember a team saying, "We think we have 2 or 3 quarterbacks that we can win with," and then actually having a guy that they can win with? I feel like that's the line you get from teams that have crap like
Well,
that's the scary thing.
yeah, I mean, if you have more than one quarterback, you have no quarterbacks, right? Is it what's the saying? Like, and Shanahan, kind of ending this in a perfect Shanahan way. I do believe we have 3 quarterbacks, talent wise, who are all capable of being franchise like quarterbacks, but that's just capable. Brock's done that in his 8, and we have 2 other guys on our roster who we strongly believe we can do that also. So look, they do believe Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback. And the other 2, Darnold and Lance, are guys that like, yeah, they could be. We don't know if they will be. That's what we're gonna find out this offseason or this season. But clearly Brock Purdy is that guy. So maybe finally we're gonna get stability. I don't know.
Oh, I would sign for that. I would sign for some
Me
stability. That
too.
would sure be nice. The weird thing to me though is
Too.
like, why don't they say about Brock? Brock did it for 8 games and it was awesome. But he's got to show that he can do that for a whole season or 2 years or 3 years. Like, why is it like we know? Kyle said, we know what we have. How is that possible when you just saw Jimmy Garoppolo look really good for 5 games in 2017 and then you had to move heaven and earth to get off of him?
We'll see. I mean, that's the thing that to me it doesn't make sense because you're not really going to get much for Trey Lance, at least not before people have seen what he looks like and people actually believe in what they see in Trey Lance, right? So right now, I mean, if they're trying to trade him, it's just on hope and prayer because it's not based on anything other teams have seen on the field. Oh,
that's why they're pumping him up.
I'm tired. my glass of my cup of coffee is almost out, and I don't know. I might need another one if I have to listen to these conspiracies for any longer.
All right.
But in all serious, Rob, in all seriousness, like, me and Rob like disagree quite a bit, but we still get along. We're still friends. And Rob, that's why I'm on the Gold Standard Network, and why we do the Bully Ball podcast with Jay on Tuesday. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the Gold Standard Network podcast, wherever you find your podcasts, on YouTube. I actually have all the links below in the description, so make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you guys are subscribed to Rob if you and you know what? You're probably thinking to yourself, I don't want to hear like this echo chamber of conspiracy theories. The good news is it's not always just Rob talking. And it's a lot of people with a lot of different viewpoints. And that's what I love most about the Gold Standard Network. So make sure you guys tune into that. Rob, plug your stuff, man. Anything else you want to talk about or anything else you want to promote?
Yeah, you hit on it. Like and subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast YouTube channel. We have YouTube memberships now. So for $2.99 a month, you get custom emojis, you get membership badges, you get priority comment response. We're going to be doing some members only broadcasts coming up in the near future. So again, the 49ers content community is a rich community. And like you said, dip your toe in a bunch of different waters here and you'll get a complete picture, I think, of all the different schools of thought regarding the Niners.
This is true. Well, thanks, Rob, for joining me today. Thank you guys for tuning in on a Friday morning. I know it was really early when we started. We went past an hour. A lot of you guys stayed here the whole time listening to us talk. So I really appreciate that. Even after my computer crashed, you guys stuck around. So appreciate that. Have a good rest of your Friday and have a great weekend, people. Peace. Find my outro video supposed to have it queued up already. Peace.